Hi, and welcome to Talking Wildfire. Today we're here with Brian Hicks. And I've known Brian Hicks a very long time. We met as Smokejumpers back in the 90s. And Brian has a really interesting background in wildfire. And I would like for him to have the opportunity to tell you all about it. This is Brian Hicks.
Hello, everyone. So Brian Hicks. I've been a wildland firefighter, fuel specialist, former smoke jumper, former hotshot for the last 33 seasons. So I think this is 33 years now. I had a 28-year career with the U.S. Forest Service, retired in 2020, and then I've been working as a fire warden with the Idaho Department of Lands for the last 4.5 years. I spent time as a fuel specialist. I started in 1992 on the Idaho Panhandle National Forest. Started down in Fernan, Central Zone, and then worked there several years. Went over, worked with Mike as a U.S. Forest Service smoke jumper with in Missoula, Montana. Did that for 3 seasons, and then went back to work on the Idaho Panhandle. And I've been involved with incident management teams since 2003. I started on the team as a team division supervisor on a Type 2 incident management team. Did that for years. I'm a Type 3 incident commander. I am a Type 1 burn boss. Um, I've been I've been to I've counted it up. I've been to 17 different states uh, as a firefighter and fire management specialist, fuel specialist. I've been from everyone for the Arctic Circle to actually climbing over the border fence and fighting a fire in Mexico. So I've been all over the West, all over the place. Uh, and I just wanted to just give you a little background on my experience and everything. The agency has changed. Uh, the culture's changed a lot over the years, from the early '90s. I think the fires were a little smaller back then too, as well. We didn't have these big, 200,000 acre fires and all that. It was just they were a little bit smaller. Um, the mission was a little bit different. I think we spent a lot of time doing prescribed burning, prescribed fire. We spent a lot of time, cleaning up sales after logging operations. Where you clean the slash up. They'd grapple pile the slash and you'd burn the piles, or you do a broadcast or underburn. Um, and they didn't do a whole lot of landscape underburning, because there was so much activity. I think they did a pretty dang good job of keeping of managing the fire and the fuels on the ground. The I believe I started seeing changes. I would say in the early 2000s, things really changed with the size of the fires. I don't know. I personally think it's more. I think climate is kind of cyclic. Goes up and down. Depending on uh, where we're at in the cycle, and we kind of are in a drier cycle, from what I've seen. I was involved with the Bitterroot fires in 2000. Where I saw entire landscapes burning up in the Bitterroot Valley of Montana. I was also on the Hanford fire in central Washington. These are some fast moving sagebrush fires where, I was with the Idaho Panhandle Hotshots, and we saw flame lengths of 75 feet coming off the top of the sagebrush. Fast moving fires. I remember we lost a burnout operation, and we pulled out 10 miles to try to catch the burnout, and then we're unsuccessful at picking that up. So, these fires are huge nowadays. As a division supervisor, I've spent a lot of time in the canyon country, kind of flashy fuels in big canyon country in central Idaho, uh, and also western Montana as well. And I do have some tricks of the trade that I can chat with you guys about on, things that we look for that help fire managers fight those big fires like that. There's certain things that we look for. You never, if you're doing an indirect fire line, you never go to the next ridge line. You pick out what you think is the good ridge line, and then go 2 ridge lines down from that. You got to think of these bigger boxes when you're looking at some of these larger fires like this too as well. So I've had a really good career. I think the other thing too that's changed over the years is just not as many people going into natural resources. Kind of the climate when I got into, there was a lot of seasonal firefighters, with the U.S. Forest Service, and getting a permanent job was, it was almost unheard of. It took me, 6 seasons to actually get on and get a permanent job offer. As kind of a permanent seasonal position even. And I got my first job offer. And I thought it was like I won the golden ticket. I was like, holy cow! They're offering me a position. I got a permanent job, and I thought it was just like, I felt like a made man. I'm like, this is it. And I've just being a firefighter. It's been a sacrifice, but it's been very rewarding too as well. I think it was kind of recession proof, really. We had the economy up and down, and I'm just going to work, putting in 40 hours a week and fighting fires in the summer, and it's been stable and it's been good. A lot of my identity is tied up with being a firefighter. I have got a wonderful family, had some great times, and was able to kind of balance the family life with firefighting too as well. But it is a challenge, especially those early years too, when, you're not making quite as much money, and, you're really dependent on that, making that overtime too as well. I remember summers where, I'd have like 2 or 3 unpaid days off all summer long. You're talking like 100 days on fires. Just with a couple days off here and there. Communication wasn't that great in the early 90s when I started off. You could hardly get a hold of your family. Maybe they'd hear from you once in 21 days, figuring out where you're at and all that too. So what I'm hoping in this videos is just, give you a little introduction to, my experience and what I've been through. And I think I have some things that could help you out too. Just understanding, fires in like fast moving fuels, understanding, what a fuel specialist is and what we're looking for, the problems we encounter, and kind of the future of fire too. Problems I see in the future, as the seasons are getting drier and longer and everything too, as the urban interface, as the houses move into the country too as well. I think I can pass on a little knowledge with that too as well, Mike. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I am, Brian, and I know that you have a lot to offer, so that's why you're one of the people that I picked to come on and be spotlighted here. And so, yeah, I'm very looking forward to what you have to share with us, Brian.
Yeah, Mike, maybe I could talk about some desert fires a little bit too. I've spent a lot of time in, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, southern Idaho, and I've seen a lot of flashy, fast-moving fires too. I think it really takes people by surprise when they go down to these areas and they're fighting fires. There's a little bit of prep work that you can do. I come from a northern climate. I'm from Idaho. But there's things you can do ahead of time that actually kind of prep you for going into the desert conditions. One thing I do is like I make sure that I'm always physically fit. I work out all winter long. Especially it's especially important as I get older too as well, because you have to kind of keep up with the younger generation. And so I think keeping yourself physically fit is, very important. I spend a lot of time, eating nutritionally you have to like watch what you're putting into your body. You don't want a bunch of empty carbs and junk into your body. Eat healthy foods. Um, Everything you can do to prep yourself for that environment. One thing I do when I'm in a desert environment is I don't drive around with the air conditioning on. I try to just roll down the window and just deal with it. Another thing I do if I'm stationed somewhere, like I spent quite a bit of time in Kingman, Arizona, as a type 3 incident commander, waiting for fires, and everyone else is like kind of hanging out inside in the AC, but I'm in the shade outside, acclimating. I'm taking desert runs in the morning. I'm getting used to that elevation too as well, the higher elevations. If you spend that time, even a couple days, prepping yourself for that, staying out, turning off that AC, going outside, just sitting in the shade and just, getting acclimatized to that conditions, I'll give you a leg up for sure. It is hard to train at elevation, but things that I find that help too, like if I'm in the winter training, a lot of times I'll put on a pack test vest and I might do a stair stepper, so you're kind of like working, you're working your lung capacity. You're doing other little tricks and to give you that edge in those environments. And when you get that call to roll on a desert fire too, you just can't get tunnel vision, Mike. I saw one time on the Idaho-Utah border, kind of in sagebrush and grass, I watched, I was working with I was working on a local fire, and a new start started in the middle of the desert. There happened to be some smoke jumpers coming by. They jumped it. And I drove out and met up with the smoke jumpers, and we were kind of making a plan. Well, we had some local resources show up on the fire, and they're in pickup trucks, oil engines, maybe Type 6 engines, smaller engines, brush engines, and they're driving around at the head of the fire. They're not doing anything tactically. That's where all the action is. That's where the flames are. That's where everyone wants to go, and they're like drawn like moths to the flames. And I'm watching these guys, buzzing around at the head of the fire, and I'm like, man, these guys are going to get themselves killed. And all of a sudden, one of the engines stalls out. I think it gets too close to the smoke and it sucks. Stalls out the engine. Another engine like buzzes out to like to go help. And so there's two engines broken down at the head of the fire. They're not moving. And I got my pickup truck there, and I'm looking across the desert, and I'm like, I'm trying to decide in my mind. It's like, do I have enough time to go and help these guys? And basically, I looked at it and it's like, I don't have enough time. I'm going to watch these guys die right here. I do not have time to go out there at the head of this fire and pick these guys up. And I was just horrified. I mean, I was just like watching it, this flaming edge. I mean, it's like probably 50-foot flame lengths are like rolling right for these guys. And I'm like, man, I can't do anything. And then right then a heavy helicopter lifts over the top of the ridge and comes out of it. Wasn't ordered. I have no idea where he came from. And he just dumps right on top of those guys. And that fire just split, burned around that engine or those two engines, and then kept on moving. And, but to me, that was like, I put that lesson, in my memory bank as like, okay, you got to do sound principles when it comes to desert fires. You got to go back. If everything's going to hell and you can't do anything else, you got to go back to the basics. You got to go back and anchor and flank. Anchor and flank, find yourself a good anchor point, and then start building off of that. And then if that doesn't work, then you need to get further enough ahead of the fire so you can establish another anchor point and then work off of that anchor point for like an indirect line. But you have to get far enough ahead. That fire that I was involved with in Hanford, where I saw the 75-foot flame lengths, we lost the burnout that we're on, the hotshot crew. We pulled out 10 miles to try to catch that thing, and then we're unable to catch it. 10 miles we tried to pull out, reestablish another anchor point, and get ahead of that thing, and we're not able to. I mean, this thing is like, it's unbelievable how fast these desert fires move too. If you can get out as a Type 3 incident commander, what I usually do is try to establish a a staging area. So as resources are coming in, you get them in a staging area, and then you send them. You have someone manage your staging area, and then you send them into your ops chief, who will brief them up, and then send them over to. Usually, we'll split the fire in two. We'll get 2 division supervisors out there. Maybe we'll run an alpha and a whiskey or something like that, and we'll run 2 division supervisors. Usually, split the fire in half, and then we'll start going out and anchoring it, and then working with aircraft, and then have those division supervisors working with aircraft, and then working with those equipment or the crews and equipment as they come in too. But a lot of times, your job as an incident commander or ops chief your job really is to make order out of the chaos. So crazy things are happening. You got to make order out of the chaos. You got to make good, sound decisions that keep firefighters and public safe. And I found the best way to do that is get that staging area, get a staging area manager who's tracking those resources coming in, get those folks a good briefing, and then make that announcement to the division supervisors like, hey, I'm sending you a Type 6 brush engine. I'm sending you a dozer. I'm sending you a road grader. And then start sending those resources out. And then think about those tactics, anchor and flank. If you have the luxury of time, you can get ahead of the fire a little bit too and start doing some structure triage. You can start looking at, it's just like a triage, just like a medical, so you roll up and you're like, okay, this place is going to, this person is gone. We can't do anything here. This one, we could do something, this one can do something with some improvement. It's the same thing with houses, Mike. So we go into these subdivisions and you're running triage. I mean, maybe you're hanging a different color flagging on the mailbox. You're like, okay, this is a goner. You hang some red flag on it. Maybe the next one, whatever color coordination that you want to do for those two. What I look for, you just have to remember those. Your primary objectives is firefighter and then public safety. So firefighter safety is above all else. If you can't get your firefighters into an area safely, then they can't be effective. So firefighter safety is number one. So if you can't get a good ingress, a good route in for your firefighters, and then you can't get them safely out, you can't engage. You don't want to push it. A lot of times, we're emotionally charged, because we want to do something, and we want to help people. I get it. I don't like seeing houses burn down, and I want to do everything I can. But you got to remember your prime directives. You got to keep firefighters safe, and you got to keep the public safe too. So if there's evacuations going on, you got to get those people out, and then keep your firefighters safe as you engage. And then doing that structure triage. It's down and dirty. You don't have to do anything crazy. Take a few notes. You pull up to a house, you're like, okay, yeah, if we move this firewood off the porch, maybe we do this over here, this little thing over here, this will be standalone, and maybe you can have a few minutes to do something that, maybe you limb up some trees, whatever you got to do, and then go in and out. But you need to do that quick evaluation of those subdivisions as that fire is moving through there. And if it's taking too much time, you just got to write that house off. I mean, it's kind of it's hard to do because we just like to hang on, but you just got to move on to the next place, for something like that, Mike. The other thing too, if you get down into canyon country, that's where, you have chutes and draws and you can get firefighters trapped easily. So basically anytime you get fire below you that's a watch out situation. You do not want, unburned fuel between you and the fire. You do not want fire underneath you. That's a bad situation too. So we try everything we can to keep out of those tight canyons, tight draws. We like to go down and anchor below and then work our way up a slope, versus anchoring from the top. You can do downhill line construction. I mean, I've dug miles of fire line, working from the top, working down. So you can do it, but you just have to be strategic about it. You got to, all the resources need to know what you're doing. You got to be far enough ahead of the main fire so that it's not going to spot below you, which could be, 3 ridges away from that main fire, before you're going to anchor in somewhere and then work your way down. Also, you need to be tied into somewhere if you're going to work like a secondary line. You got to be anchored into a solid road or a stream or a lake or something. Got to be anchored in as you bring that down. And then if you do bring fire down your line on your secondary line too, you got to be able to bring it down at your pace where you can actually bring your black or bring your safety zone with you, Mike. I was on the 30-mile fire in 2001 that killed out of Twist, Washington, that killed the 4 firefighters. I was on that fire. I wasn't there during the fatality, but I called out that afternoon and then showed up that evening on that fire too. I was actually working on that. I was a task force leader on that division that was working where those fatalities happened too. And what you see is, this happens to everyone, is you see mission creep. So firefighters, we have this, can-do attitude. I can do this. I can push. And those guys, they started picking up spot fires, and it was kind of, like, well, we can go and do something. We can pick up these spot fires along the road and everything like that. But they lost vision on the bigger picture. So they didn't see that, you really had to stand replacing wildfire kind of burning over here, and there's no way that you're going to hold it on that side of the road. But they just kept going further and further in, like, we're just going to pick up these spot fires. We're just going to do this along the road. And then pretty soon they were cut off. And so that mission creep, I think, can really get firefighters in trouble in these situations. Like, we just got that, we all have that can-do attitude. I can push it. I can go further. And, next thing you know, you're getting stretched out there. You're getting further away from your safety zone. Your escape route's getting cut off. Things are happening as you just keep pushing. So what I tell my firefighters is, like, go back to the basics, go back and anchor and flank. If you can't do anything else, maybe you can just do that 100 yards a line or whatever, that 100 meters a line. Maybe you can just go back and do what you can do. Go back to the basics, go back to that anchor point and just build off of that. The fire will eventually get put out. It's going to be put out. You're going to get the fire out. No fire burns forever. But do what you can with the resources you have. And if you can't hold what's behind you, you need to stop and stretch people behind you and stretch back to that anchor point until you can reestablish that anchor point and bring that black with you. I would say that's the best thing for those fires, Mike. And then, like I mentioned, getting out far enough ahead of that fast moving fire where you can establish that anchor, and one way you could do that is like a road intersection. Like, you come up to a nice road intersection, you're like, well, okay, if we burn along this road and I got enough engines to hold it and I could burn along this road, I can actually, build that black edge and, like, work from that point. And, and just burning nice and slow, let it, build that black and then work towards your main fire. Then your fire will hit that black edge and not have anything else to burn. One thing that is really important for fire line supervisors, you have to keep a good operational tempo, and you can't get your folks too excited about stuff. You have to make good sound decisions keep that good tempo. I mean, you want your folks to be productive, but you don't want them making quick, rash decisions. You want them to make good decisions with a good operational tempo. A lot of times I kind of look at my folks and I look at, fatigue. How are they doing? How's morale doing? Do they have the resources necessary to fight fires? A lot of times what I run into, especially as like a type 3 incident commander, is, like the bigger teams, like the type 1 teams and the complex incident management teams, they'll have like endless resources. They got all kinds of resources. They got all kinds of folks working for them. When you're with a smaller organization, you just don't have that. So you have to recognize what your folks can handle. If your folks are getting fatigued, if they're not getting the support they needed, if you can't feed your firefighters, you need to put a pause on that. You need to call folks and be an advocate for your resources. A lot of times I spend, as an incident commander, I'll be on the phone and I'm talking to the forest supervisor or the forest FMO and saying, hey, don't send me a single firefighter, another firefighter, until we get a caterer in place to feed these folks, because I'm hauling lunches in, I'm trying to feed everyone, and I just can't do it. Don't send me a single one until you can get me this. And then paint a picture for those guys too. A lot of times if you paint a picture of the resources that are at risk, you can say, hey, I got $60 million worth of timber, standing timber right here, that is being threatened. I got subdivisions that are being threatened, and paint that picture for those that upper management on what you have going on, so you can get the support you need to get the tools you need to suppress that fire. I found that that's very successful if you paint the picture with those guys, get that relationship built. Just lay it out there. Say, hey, this is what I need, and I can't move another step until I get this and this in place. And you'll be surprised at what, because those managers are resourceful too as well, and they'll start making calls and they'll say, hey, I know you got this going on, but we got this emerging fire over here that needs this and this. Can we get these resources shifted over? I think another thing you got to do, Mike, is you got to think outside the box. You're like, okay, so someone will say, well, I can't send you a 20-person, I can't send you that hotshot crew. And you're like, well, okay, could I borrow them? How about if I borrow them for 3 shifts? Maybe they're not being, utilized, during those 3 days. And it's like, hey, just let me just borrow them for 3 shifts. I got this critical line to put in, and then we'll turn the corner on this. So paint that picture for those guys. Just think outside the box, like utilizing the tools that you have in your toolbox. You're not going to have, no one rolls out and they have like every snap-on tool that they need. There's always something you're missing, Mike. I don't care where you're at and how well you're outfitted. You're always missing something. It's just like doing the best thing you can with the resources that you have. And I would say, being strategic about it too. It's like, well, I have one hotshot crew. Maybe I'll work them here on Division Alpha for 2 shifts, and then I'll shift them over here to Division Delta, and then I'll have them work 3 shifts over here. Be strategic about those crews. Just because a crew's working on some division somewhere doesn't mean they have to stay there forever. Move them around the fire wherever it makes sense, to shore up those things. But that's what you run into that a lot with those with the type 3, especially with the type 3 fires too. I ran this summer. I was down in Avery, Idaho, as a division supervisor, and I counted it up, and there were 11 of us as overhead structure, which is pretty light. I mean, we had 250 firefighters on the ground. We had a spike camp, and I had 11 overhead for that too. What I found that really helped me too was like relationships. So I had established relationships with the district. So Mike, one of the things that that we got to do, you have to make sure you have those relationships with those areas, networking, preseason, during the season as things are happening. Like I was able to share resources with the local fire management officer. So he had initial attack resources, and I just plugged those folks right in on our fire, and they were on a short leash, so they had to, they might be able to break loose and everything like that too. But that's a force multiplier. That gives you, and it keeps those firefighters happy. They're working, they're happy, they're fighting fires, and then if something bigger happens, they just break loose and roll to the new start. But utilizing all those resources, and then a lot of times just asking like, hey, I really need, like one of the things we needed this summer was a water tender. And he's like, the FMO is like, oh yeah, we got a water tender. I have him working on this other fire, but we can kick him over to you for a couple shifts. And it was perfect, and that was just what we needed to supply those, so those brush engines could, draw off that tender. But so instead of ordering up someone else and coming in and everything like that too, and that does help with cost savings too as well, Mike. I think we have to be conscious of, I think we have to be good stewards of the resources that we've been given. I think we need to make good, sound decisions, for the taxpayers too as well. So if we could do something without, a lot of extra fanfare or money, it's just smart, good firefighting. But those are some of the things I look for. I did notice this summer with the team down in Avery, Idaho. I noticed some fatigue on our crew, and that's part of that, keeping that operational tempo. I noticed some folks getting stressed out, and I just asked them, it's like, how can I help you? How can I help you? What help do you need from me so you can be successful? And they were like, well, I could use this, and this, so I got extra help in whatever it was they needed. I took care of those needs for that team, so you got to keep that operational tempo and keep those guys well supplied and cared for. And then also, it's little things that you don't even think about, like, like, I think it shows humility too for an incident commander, make coffee in the morning, get the coffee going, make sure, you grab, if the lunches show up, run out and grab the lunches. You're not better than anyone else. You should be able to, the office trash is getting full, squish it down and bag it up and get it out of there, so having that servant attitude goes a long ways with building your team, so you got to build the best team that you have. And like I said, that Snap-on toolbox is going to roll up and you're not going to have all the tools. You're going to be missing critical pieces. It's like, well, how can I do this? Can I call someone from back home? Like I needed some additional logistical help, and we had a firefighter that's great with that stuff. So I called him up and said, hey, can you come down here in a truck and help out with logistics? And he's like, yep. So I ordered him up and came down, plugged in, no problem. Maybe you could do some remote help. There's people, all kinds of people working remote. Maybe you can, maybe you need some mapping. Maybe you need, someone working on your situation report. Maybe you need some public information support like that. The other thing too that I would say is critical is keeping people informed. If you can't make your decisions in a box. I mean, this is an open environment and people just want to know what's going on. So you have to think about your stakeholders. Like, okay, who needs to know about this situation? It could be different reasons. We're working around some industry ground, and we had, all the industry folks were very concerned about it. So I would send twice a day updates to the stakeholders. say, hey, this is what's going on. I'd send it over to the public information officer. I'd send it to the local FMO, the local fire management officer. I'd send it to, forest level staff. And if you kept them informed, they were less likely to, hassle you about anything. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, you gave me this update already. I appreciate that. And I even got feedback, back to you as well. And they're like, hey, this is great. We love this information that you're passing on. You're keeping us up to date. We know what the costs are, and that's just part of being a good steward too, as well, Mike. And then I think if you do those things, you will be way more successful as a fire line leader. If you think about that operational tempo, thinking about taking care of your people, keeping them safe, and getting those networks established too as well.
Well, Brian, thanks a lot for your time. This is excellent talk, and it's a good chance for learning for people that are working in the background like you are. And thanks again. We all really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet, Mike.
We're doing this for all of you. If you like what we're doing, please give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment below. See you next time.